everyone, Pam Gregory, astrologer. I'm going to be speaking to you today about the second half of November and the powerful lunar eclipse that we have coming up in Taurus on the 19th of the month. So we're already well within eclipse energy, which will continue this month through December and through the early months of next year. And eclipse energy is always very intense. It's also transformational energy. It's quite often quite pivotal. And I'll be talking more about that as we get to it. Strong Uranus in the first half of the month. In fact, we've had strong Uranus all this year because there's an ongoing long-term square between Saturn and Uranus for the whole of this year, and that will continue into next year, although not quite as tightly. And at the new moon in Scorpio, we have the Sun and Moon very tightly opposing Uranus. So Uranus being highlighted with all of its eruptions and explosions and shocks and surprises. Equally, as we enter the mid-month of November, mid-month is very strong in energy in November, and equally we're going to have another crescendo, I believe, in December. But we start on the 14th of the month and we have Mercury opposing Uranus at 13 of Scorpio Taurus. And this is really about shocking facts or shocking information, shocking news coming to light. And that same day, the moon moves into the warrior sign of Aries. And by the 16th, the moon has come to conjunct Eris and square Pluto. So whatever shocking, surprising information is going to be coming up, people may be feeling quite angry. Aries energy, and again we have this repeated frequent highlighting of the Eris-Pluto square. Remember the long-term Eris-Pluto square we had all of this year, and again we've got it all of next year, is people taking to the streets and really demanding more equality, demanding to be heard for everybody, an inclusive society, whereas Pluto in Capricorn is top-down authority, rules and regulations, and that's the clash. So by the 17th, we have, just to take a step back here actually, Mars earlier in the month, Mars is really energizing and activating the Saturn-Uranus square at this point. And early in the month, and Mars kind of pours petrol on things because Mars wants to kind of go, act, do, particularly when it's in a very strong sign like Scorpio, its ancient sign of rulership. But earlier in the month, particularly around the new moon, we had Mars squaring Saturn more exactly. So that's like go, press on the accelerator, go faster. But Saturn just means we hit a brick wall. There are rules, there are regulations, things we have to do for our safety, etc. And it can create a lot of frustration. However, by the middle of the month, particularly by the 17th, Mars has moved on in Scorpio, so it's moving away from that exact square to Saturn, but coming to exactly oppose Uranus. And this is much more combustible, eruptive energy, unexpected, sudden things happening. It is the classic signature for earthquakes. I remember going to an astrology lecture, gosh, many years ago, and the presenter had done an enormous amount of research into earthquakes all over the world, and he discovered that the absolutely classic signature was hard aspects between Mars and Uranus. In fact, at Hiroshima, we had an exact conjunction between Mars and Uranus. So this energy isn't likely to be confined just to the 17th. It's going to boil over into the adjacent days either side. And it's like frustrations can no longer be contained. People are just, Uranus is the sign of revolution and rebellion. It's also the sign of awakening. It doesn't want constraint. So whatever has felt frustrated in the earlier part of the month becomes much more eruptive. It could be real earthquakes, could be political, financial, but it could also be behavioral, social earthquakes. And that runs us straight into the lunar eclipse in Taurus, which is happening on the 19th of the month. It's happening at 27 degrees, 14 minutes of Taurus. It's happening at 0:57 a.m. Pacific and 8:57 a.m. UK time. So I mentioned in the last video that we have 7 full moons in a row at 27 degrees of their signs. On the 20th of October, we had a full moon at 27 of Aries. This lunar eclipse is like a big full moon at 27 of Taurus, and for the next 5 months, all the full moons, as I say, will be at 27 degrees of their sign. So if you have anything, any planet or angle between 26 and 28 degrees of its sign, you will be feeling over these coming months very triggered by each of these full moons, which is about feelings and emotions coming to a head. Now, at this lunar eclipse, it's particularly going to be in the fixed sign. So it's going to be 26 to 28 degrees of Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, Aquarius that are likely to be affected. So just watch for that, this repeating pattern. Of course, if we look at the US chart, which I looked at when I did the video on the US Pluto return, we're aware that Pluto is at 27 of Capricorn, so this lunar eclipse is exactly trining it. And it also, in the US chart, we have the moon at 27 of Aquarius. So this lunar eclipse is squaring it. So rebellious people in the chart of the US. Very, very interesting. Also, eclipses repeat over about a 19-year cycle. And so the last time we had an eclipse at 27 degrees of Taurus, a lunar eclipse at 27 degrees of Taurus, was on the 20th of November, 2002. And look back, it will be falling in exactly the same place in your chart. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, you can download a free birth chart from my website and then go to this link in the description below, and you can get a 2-part video series that will explain very simply how to find these points in your chart that I talk about with every update and what it means for you. So I remember very distinctly for myself, this is falling in the 7th house of my chart. This is important long-term one-on-one relationships, particularly things like marriage. My marriage was ending in 2002. And whatever is happening this time around, you can very often get an echo of what happened last time. So it's really well worth watching for these repeating cycles. So let me now see if I can share my screen to look in more detail at this lunar eclipse chart. So I also want to say that obviously feelings and emotions coming to a head in a very big way, as we always have. Because the moon is in Taurus, it's likely to be around Taurus-related issues. This is the moon in Taurus. And by the way, just to say again, I've set this chart for the UK because this is where I live. If you don't live in the UK time zone, please ignore all the houses and the clock face of the chart. We'd simply be looking at the planets in their signs and their aspects to each other. So you have to adjust for your own birth time. So feelings are likely to be running high around issues to do with the earth, climate, extreme earth events in Taurus. Taurus is fixed earth. It can also be to do with finance and the economy. And by the way, going back to the US with that, this lunar eclipse triggering Pluto in the US chart, remember that we have barely begun the US Pluto return. That doesn't become exact for the first time in 246 years until the 20th of February 2022. And a lot of twos there. I understand there's a master numbers in numerology. But the Pluto return will be felt operationally all the way through 2022 and 2023. And it will be about economic and constitutional issues principally, but whatever happens in the US will ripple across the rest of the world. So, Taurus energy is around finance, banking, the economy. It's around earth issues, climate issues. It's also around food and food distribution systems and agriculture. It's also around our feelings of safety and security, our root chakra issues. And those are likely to be strong at this time because a full moon is always intense. And Scorpio in itself, we have 3 planets in Scorpio here, Mars in Scorpio, very comfortable in Scorpio, Mercury and the Sun. And Scorpio in itself is the most intense of water signs. Scorpio is deep, dark, often murky energy, the energy of secrets, the energy that has been push down either individually or collectively in society for a very long time, many years. In our own case, it may even be lifetimes, things we haven't wanted to open up and look at. So this is the time that these secret Scorpio, these things that either we haven't been aware of collectively or we haven't been willing to look at, are likely to come to light. And this is ongoing through the months, continuing through the coming months. But this is a very strong point for this to happen. It's almost like I have a vision of a really dirty, dark, dank, musty room with kind of beetles and cockroaches scuttling about. And the door to that room has not been open for many, many years. But you go in with a very brilliant torchlight and shine it in the corners. And you're going to see an awful lot of things that may not be pretty, but you have to bring to light in order to reveal them and release them, as it were. Or it's about a kind of festering wound and you've kept a plaster over it and you haven't wanted to look at it. And now the plaster is ripped off and we have to just look at it and deal with it. So it's that kind of an energy, but very much related to secrets coming to light. And many secrets are pouring out on the internet now. You've got to obviously go to different channels for those, but nevertheless, they're going to start to overspill, I think, into the collective in a bigger way. Now, eclipses are very powerful. They often act like wild cards. They can jump us forwards in our destiny, particularly if we've strayed from our soul's path of growth. They can kind of get us back onto our soul's path of growth. And they act as portals where the veil to the higher realms becomes thinner and we can access more high-level information at that time. So very good time, very powerful time for downloads of information. And if you found that you have energy blocks, you're stuck in certain ways, and this may, as I say, even go back over many lifetimes, a super simple technique to use if you don't use it already is emotional freedom technique, tapping. And if you don't know what that is, you can just do an internet search on demo on emotional freedom technique. You can learn it in 5 minutes, and that's a new free tool to have in your toolkit to unblock energy. It works really well. Now, in order for us to have an eclipse, a new moon or a full moon has to be very close to the nodal axis. So here we can see the moon is just 4 degrees from the north node. So it has to be close to either the south node or the north node in order for us to have an eclipse. Now, this is actually very close to the north node. So although it's only a partial lunar eclipse, it's pretty close to a total lunar eclipse, in fact. Interestingly, the north node, very positively, it symbolizes our future collective destiny, where we're headed collectively. And the Scorpio energy, particularly Mars in Scorpio, will help give us the courage to move forwards, particularly after we've released anything that needs to be unblocked, as it were, in the plumbing, or secrets have come out and we've had to deal with them in society. Another important aspect to be aware of is Jupiter at 24 degrees of Aquarius here is in a T-square to the sun and the moon. So whatever is unfolding at this lunar eclipse is going to be blown up, is going to be kind of exaggerated at this time. Now, with Jupiter being in Aquarius, this could be to do with freedoms and human rights, that kind of thing. But it also says that this is a great time to expand your networks, expand your networks of like-minded people, your community, your tribe, Aquarius. And I think I have an image here of how trees have an invisible but very strong network underground. They connect to all the other trees in the forest. Equally, fungi do that too. They have this network, invisible network underground of connection, which isn't apparent from the surface, but is actually very, very strong and supportive for trees and for fungi. So this is about us operating in the same way to form those very strong bonds with people of like mind, and whether that's, as I say, in person or online, it's going to be very sustaining for us over these months, particularly around issues of freedom and human rights. Another important aspect to be aware of is Venus at 12:17 of Capricorn is very tightly trine Uranus at 12:11 of Taurus. So that's only 6 minutes from exactitude, an exact trine. Now, if Venus is traveling through your 5th house or your 7th house, this could mean the sudden out of the blue relationship that comes in. But I think on a bigger perspective, because Capricorn and Taurus are both signs related to banking, big business, the economy, that kind of thing, this is really either about shocks and surprises coming in at this time, but it's also about the increasing digitization, I believe, of the financial system. And I was writing about this, way back in 2013, increasing blockchain technology coming in. And this is really unavoidable. It's going to be a lot more AI in our lives, whether we like it or not. And just to say that we have very strong Aquarius energy right now, because we have Jupiter and Saturn in Aquarius. Saturn is going to stay there until March 2023, and that is the year that Pluto starts to enter Aquarius, enters fully that sign in 2024 and stays there until 2044. 20 years. We're going to have a lot of Aquarius energy. So every sign, every planet has a shadow side. And with Aquarius, I would say it's going to be wonderful for technology, a lot of it very benevolent technology, and we have to be very discerning as to what's benevolent and what's not at this time. But a lot of it has already been developed, and it's just not publicly available yet, but it will become more so the more Aquarius energy we get. But the shadow side of Aquarius can be a kind of hyper science or hyper rationalism, if you like, where the intellect is revered to the exclusion of the heart. And I just really want to say here that I'm going to just leave that up for a moment, but I really want to say here that the heart is absolutely crucial, that we connect to the heart in order to connect to our humanity and to retain our humanity. And also, Zach, who I interviewed the other day, I think many of you heard Epiphany Talks with him, and I'll put the link below because many people have enjoyed it. Zach is an aspect of the Ascended Master Dwal Kul, and he several times has said that it is our heart that connects us to the cosmos. It is our heart that's going to connect us to becoming galactic citizens. I think that's really quite beautiful. So we must never focus on so much science and improved technology that we minimize or exclude our hearts. I really, really want to emphasize that very strongly. And a very simple way to keep in touch with that is simply to, on a daily basis, just for a few moments, imagine you're breathing in and out through the heart as if you're breathing in and out through your lung. Just a couple of aspects I want to point out in addition to what I've said. We have these black lines here with a little Q, a small Q on them. There are 3 of them actually, but I'm going to talk about these 2 here. This aspect is a 165-degree aspect. It's spelt quindecile, but it's pronounced quindecile. Noel Teal, who I studied my master's course with, he kind of discovered this aspect, and he loved to call it the quindecile. And it is an aspect of obsession, upheaval, upset. You can only use it within a 2-degree orb, a very tight orb. But here, the sun is in a super tight quindecile to Uranus. It's just a few minutes from exactitude. So again, we're bringing this very strong Uranus energy again, revolution, rebellion, awakening, shocks, surprises, and truth. Remember that Uranus is the piercing sword of clarity and truth, like that very bright torchlight that we take into that dark, dank, dirty room, just piercing truth. So that is an additional aspect of this lunar eclipse. And we also have Mars in Scorpio, incredibly focused and intense, in quintile to the moon, the people. So this is a suggestion of assertive people or angry people, people on a mission, really, to achieve. They've set a goal and they're not going to be diverted from it. So we've got a lot of upsurging energy here. And I think in many ways very positive. We've got this North Node. It's a North Node eclipse. That's about our future collective destiny that we're moving towards, having shed the old, having released the old. You also, probably very hard to see here, but there's some faint blue lines with capital Qs on them. Those are quintiles, 72-degree aspects of creativity. And we have 5 of them. And that's pretty remarkable in any chart. So again, this suggestion of endings and beginnings, that there's a lot of creativity as things break down. There's a lot of creativity that's going to come to the fore to step into the new. And also Jupiter in Aquarius on its own is very futuristic and very much about setting new social structures in place. And just the final thing to talk about is there's a very tight trine between the moon at 27 of Taurus and Pluto at 24 of Capricorn. And whenever you get aspects between the moon and Pluto, you tend to get, again, very intense extreme feelings. But this is also a reminder of stepping into our power, being in our power. One of the big themes of Pluto moving through Capricorn is not simply revealing any corruption in external authorities, but it's also very much encouraging us in our mastery to take back our own power at this time. And I think a huge theme of these times that we're moving through are all about that theme. So I'm going to stop sharing here. Another thing I want to say here is that another very important aspect at this lunar eclipse is the sun is very tightly conjunct a fixed star called Algol, A-L-G-O-L, which is at 26 degrees 10 minutes of Scorpio, which means that the moon is opposing Algol. Now, Algol doesn't have a very nice reputation at all. Algol is linked to lies and deceits, and it's very... Again, that links to the Scorpio energy. It's a very primitive, primordial, out of control energy. It's linked to the myth of the Medusa's head and decapitation. And therefore, the kind of symbolism is around losing your head. So I'm in no way suggesting that there's going to be decapitation at this time at all, but it could be that we see more heads of state fall. For instance, recently, the Chancellor of Austria had to resign and the Premier of New South Wales had to resign over corruption charges. It could be something like that. It could also be because of any surprising, shocking truths coming out at this time that people feel as if they're losing their heads. You know, it's just too much to bear. It can be there because another shadow side of the Aquarius energy can be mental illness. And we have to be very aware of that. Again, staying in our hearts helps us enormously with that. Some countries I would like to highlight here. And all I'm saying here is that not necessarily will these countries come into the news, but some of them may. There is a greater probability of them coming into the news if their country's charts are highlighted. Remember, astrology is a language of mathematical probability. So if we look at the chart of China, China has its midheaven in its chart. Remember, the midheaven of any country is the government or the leadership of that country. So China has its midheaven at 27 degrees of Scorpio. So remember that this lunar eclipse, it's a Scorpio, the sun in Scorpio, moon in Taurus. It's a Scorpio-Taurus axis. So China, 27 of Scorpio. Israel, 29 of Scorpio, midheaven. Spain, 26 of Scorpio, midheaven. The EU, chart for the EU, has the moon, the people, at 24 degrees of Taurus. So the lunar eclipse is going to be aspecting all of those. President Biden has his sun, SUN, at 27 degrees of Scorpio. So this lunar eclipse, the moon is directly opposing his sun. And I have found with my clients, friends, and myself, that when you have a lunar eclipse aspecting your sun represents your energy, your vitality, and your energy, your vitality is eclipsed at that time. I remember twice I went down with food poisoning, was just kind of completely energetically wiped out. So it doesn't mean you're going to get food poisoning, but it can be some kind of energetic wipeout. President Biden also has his sun in the 12th house of the chart, and that can be about health issues. In traditional astrology, the 12th house is connected to past doings, past actions, that kind of thing as well. So it will be interesting to see what unfolds at this lunar eclipse. And it's also interesting that whatever does unfold for the president or for these countries, next May, 16th of May, 2022, there is another lunar eclipse at 25 degrees of Scorpio, almost exactly opposite this current one. And again, triggering the midheavens of those countries, the EU's moon, and President Biden's chart. So we will just see what unfolds at this time. And I think what I'd like to share with you is something that I was talking to my good friend Bracker Goldsmith about when at our last chat. I suddenly remembered from many, many years ago, I was in my mid-20s and I was going to spend 5 months on my own traveling through India and Nepal. And that wasn't a very common thing to do at that time. People do it a lot more now, but then it wasn't that common. And so I decided that I was going to take a basic martial arts course in case I needed it. And indeed, I did need it at one point, and I'm ever so glad I had it, but that's a whole other story. One of the things we had to do in this martial arts course was we had to break a thick builder's plank across 2 piles of bricks with our bare hands. And you looked at that for a small 8-stone woman. I thought, that is completely impossible. There is no way I can do that. You know, I'm really going to hurt my hand. And indeed, if you just focused on the plank, that's exactly what happened. You really hurt your hand. But what we were taught, and it really stuck with me, even at the time, that this was all about your mental focus. So if you shifted your mental focus from the plank, the obstacle, to exactly 6 inches below the plank with 100% mental focus of success and positivity, 100%, then you could break the plank quite easily. And I remember triumphantly, I broke 3 in a row and felt like Hercules. And the only shift was not I'd suddenly become a bodybuilder in those minutes of change. I'd simply shifted my mental focus to success and where I wanted to end up, where I absolutely knew, no doubt, I was going to end up. So I think this is a very good kind of analogy for our times, that don't focus on the block, the difficulty, what seems impossible odds. I know people are going through complete horrors at the moment. I'm very aware of that. People have different experiences in different countries, different geographies, different roles in their lives, but I'm very well aware that people are going through the hardest time of their lives by a mile. But what I'm trying to say with this experience was, if we can start together to develop a momentum of 100% without a doubt focusing on where we want to end up, it's a very different energy. And indeed, I believe kinesiologists have found that you actually, if you do that, you actually do increase your strength and boost your immune system as well, which is very interesting. And kind of linked to that, I'd also like to say that in moving through these massive times of transition and transformation, I mean, there's no doubt we are going through a huge paradigm shift. And indeed, again, to quote Zach in his channelings, he has said that history books will be written about this time. So I'd like to ask you, because I think many of us are just trying to kind of sleepwalk or struggle through our days and get through to the end of the week. And, can we get through another week? Try to become more conscious of the role that you're playing here. Is your role as a carer? Is it a teacher? Is it a leader? Are you stepping into the archetype of Eris, the feisty street fighter? Are you just shining your light like a light bulb, which infects people around you with your frequency? But just think, in years to come, are you going to be able to look back with pride, with having built a kind of legacy of the role that you've played in these times? Because these are massive times. We all know it. I mean, there's no doubt about it. So I hope that helps you. I'm actually going to do another short video coming out in a couple of days, I think around just a couple of different perspectives and simple practical tips for you that may help at these times as well, because I'm just aware that it's not easy for many people. But coming back to this lunar eclipse, big message is release the blocks, which could go back even over lifetimes. Be aware of truths, revelations, shocks coming to light at this time, and welcome them so we can move forwards to the future and stay in our hearts. Constantly live from love and stay in your heart. That is the best navigating tool I think you could possibly have at these times. So I hope that's helped you. A lot happening here and a lot in this video, I'm aware. If you'd like more information about my books, my teaching videos, my monthly newsletter, just check out my website, pamgregory.com. And thanks so much for listening. Bye for now.